Welcome back to Daily Harmony. We're diving deep today, folks. Lesson 119.
Oh, 119.
And this one's for all you learners out there. Those of us who want to really get these powerful ideas, but without, getting totally overwhelmed. Right?
Right.
So we're going to revisit two big ones, really foundational concepts from A Course in Miracles,
Okay.
Lesson 107. Truth will correct all errors in my mind. And then Lesson 108. To give and to receive are one in truth.
Okay. Yeah. Powerful stuff.
So what we're going to do today is we're going to really kind of unpack these two.
Okay.
They're really interconnected, actually. And we're going to see how they might offer a new way of looking at things, like everyday life and the stuff we all go through.
Absolutely. It's like going beyond, just kind of a basic understanding.
Right.
Really getting to the heart of what these statements are really saying.
Yeah.
And why, they can be so powerful.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in. That first core teaching, truth will correct all errors in my mind. What's the main thing that comes to mind for you there?
Well, I think what it's saying is that there's this inherent power in truth, like what's actually true. And that power can fix all the messed up ways we think and the ways we see the world. It's like, our internal compass, it gets off sometimes.
Yeah.
And truth is that force that kind of brings it back.
That's a great way to put it. It really is. And where do you think these errors in our thinking, where do they come from?
Yeah.
The Course talks a lot about that.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the Course really points to the ego as a big source of those errors. It's that part of us, that part of our minds that really thrives on this illusion, like this illusion of separation.
Right.
Like it's constantly telling us we're like all alone and that, resources are limited.
Yeah.
That there's scarcity everywhere. And so I think that ego-driven kind of viewpoint, it leads to us misinterpreting things. And that's ultimately, the root of our suffering.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about those feelings we all have, like not enough.
Oh, yeah.
Or constantly comparing yourself to others.
That's silly.
That's all coming from that place.
Exactly.
That scarcity place.
Right.
So the ego, it's operating on this belief in scarcity, And that leads to these thoughts like, I need to protect myself, or there's not enough love to go around.
Right.
There's not enough resources.
Yeah.
And that fundamental error, the separation,
Yeah.
that idea that we're somehow like disconnected from each other and from, like a higher source or something.
Right.
That's exactly what Lesson 107 is trying to correct.
Yeah.
And, what's really interesting here is the direct impact those errors have on our actual lives.
It's not just like a theory.
Yeah, exactly.
Or philosophy. Like this has consequences.
These misinterpretations, they have real consequences. Emotionally, they lead to the suffering and conflicts, that we see in our own lives and in the world.
Yeah.
When we believe these illusions, when we buy into this ego stuff,
Yeah.
we experience fear, we experience anxiety, we feel threatened.
Totally. And I think that's where the hope in this lesson comes in, right?
Exactly.
It's like by embracing truth, and in the Course, a lot of times truth refers to this underlying reality of love and oneness and like our connection to everything, as opposed to that fear-based stuff the ego throws at us.
Right.
By embracing that truth, we start to dismantle those mental errors, those wrong ways of thinking.
It's a powerful message.
Yeah.
It really is hopeful.
Yeah.
That there's this corrective force, this power that's available to us.
Yeah.
Just by, aligning with truth,
Yeah.
being open to it.
So to make this a little more real for everyone listening, let's imagine a situation. Think about a time when you felt like you were misunderstood or maybe even unfairly judged by someone. What was your gut reaction in that moment?
That's so common, It happens to all of us. What usually happens in those moments?
Oh, man. It's like a rush of emotions, Hurt, anger, defensiveness, all that.
Right.
Your mind just goes crazy, replaying the situation over and over and over.
Oh, yeah.
Building your case for why you were right and they were wrong.
Totally.
Ray.
Okay, now let's look at that situation through the lens of this lesson. Was your perception, was that feeling of being judged unfairly, was that based on the whole truth of the situation? Or could there have been, other things going on, things that you maybe weren't even aware of?
Yeah.
Maybe a misunderstanding, on either side.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the other person was having a bad day
Right.
or was distracted.
Yeah.
Or maybe, your own past experience or your own insecurities.
Yeah.
Maybe they were coloring your perception of what was actually happening.
That is such a good point. It's all about pausing,
Yeah.
and questioning that immediate reaction,
Right.
that rush of emotions.
Yeah.
Inviting a more truthful perspective in.
Exactly.
Maybe that comment, the thing that set you off, maybe it wasn't even meant as criticism, or maybe, it was just miscommunication. And when you do that, when you step back,
Yeah.
and you consider those other possibilities, what happens to that emotional intensity? That feeling.
Often it starts to fade, doesn't it?
Yeah, we did.
Inviting in that more truthful perspective that, acknowledges that things are complex.
Yeah.
And that there are other possible interpretations other than just your initial one. It can really shift your emotional response. It can really start to correct that error, the error of, assuming negative intent or taking it personally.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that our first interpretation, that knee-jerk reaction, it's often incomplete. And maybe, pretty far from the actual truth of what's happening.
So we see how our minds can be tricked by these ego errors. And truth offers a way back to, to seeing things clearly.
Yeah.
Now, the second lesson we're looking at, to give and to receive are one in truth.
Right.
This builds on the idea of interconnectedness, but in a very, deep way. And it challenges, I think, the way most of us think about those two actions.
It really does. The main idea here is that giving and receiving, they're not separate, and they're not opposites. They're actually deeply connected aspects of, the same reality.
Yes.
It's like two sides of the same coin, especially when you're talking about truth in our shared existence,
Yeah.
that we're all connected.
And this is where the ego, I think, really messes things up.
Oh, yeah. The ego loves to operate from that place of separation.
Right.
And scarcity.
Scarcity, yeah.
It tells us, if you give something away, if you give your time, if you give resources, if you give love, you're going to have less of it.
Right.
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 And if you receive something, you're taking it from someone else.
Right.
So it reinforces this idea that we're all these isolated individuals, competing for limited stuff.
Yeah. And I think this lesson really challenges that directly, right?
It does. It absolutely does.
It challenges that ego-driven perception.
The reality, according to the Course, is that true giving, especially giving that comes from a place of love, from a place of connection, from a desire to just share goodness, that actually brings fulfillment to the giver. It expands you. It doesn't deplete you. Think of it, less like a transaction and more like a flow. When you give genuinely, you're not losing anything because that abundance, that ability to give, it's already a part of you. It's inherent.
Yeah.
Giving is just allowing that abundance to flow.
Yeah.
And naturally, it comes back to you in some form.
And then receiving with gratitude is just as important, right? It's not just taking.
Right.
Passively taking.
When we receive openly and with a thankful heart, it completes the cycle of giving.
Yeah.
It reinforces that sense of interconnectedness, that natural flow of abundance.
Right, right. It's like acknowledging that we're all part of this bigger web of giving and receiving.
Exactly. And when we resist receiving, when we, maybe we feel unworthy or we don't want to be indebted to someone, we actually disrupt that flow. Receiving with grace allows other people to experience the joy of giving. And that strengthens the connection between us.
Let's bring this down to earth for a second. For our listener, think about a time when you offered genuine support to someone who was going through something tough. Maybe you were just a listening ear, or you offered practical help, or maybe you just said some kind words.
Yeah.
What did that experience feel like for you as the giver?
In those moments of genuine giving, there's often this sense of purpose, this feeling of connection that goes beyond just the act of helping someone.
Yeah.
You notice that?
Oh, absolutely. Even if it was tough emotionally, there's this real feeling of shared humanity, I guess. Like
Yeah.
you made a real difference. And it wasn't just about them benefiting. There was something in it for me.
Exactly. That feeling of connection, that sense of purpose, that warmth,
Yeah.
that's receiving in action.
Mm.
You received the intangible benefits of extending love
Hmm.
and being in connection with another person.
Yeah.
It shows how giving and receiving, they really are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Now, the Course also talks about forgiveness, right, as a powerful example of how giving and receiving are one.
Hmm.
How does that play out in the act of forgiving someone?
It's such a deep connection.
Mm.
When you choose to forgive someone who you feel has wronged you, on the surface, it might seem like you're doing it for them.
Right.
You're letting go of your resentment. But on a deeper level, the one who benefits the most is usually you.
Right, because holding on to that anger and resentment, that can really eat you up inside, can't it?
It can. It keeps you stuck in the past.
Yeah.
And it prevents you from moving forward with any real sense of peace.
So when you forgive, when you offer that forgiveness, you're giving yourself the gift of emotional freedom
Yes.
and peace. You're releasing yourself from that burden. You're not carrying that negativity around anymore.
That act of giving forgiveness leads directly to you receiving a lighter heart, a more open heart. It's a perfect illustration of how giving and receiving are fundamentally linked.
These are some pretty deep concepts.
They are.
So for someone listening, how can they start to bring these ideas into their everyday life? The Course offers an exercise, doesn't it?
It does. It suggests a practice of meditation. Taking a few moments every day just to sit quietly and think about this idea. That truth has the power to correct the errors in your mind.
Okay, and how would you approach that?
Well, you could start by bringing to mind a specific situation, something that's causing you conflict, or a misunderstanding,
Right.
Don't get lost in the details, just focus on how it makes you feel. Then gently invite a more truthful perspective into the situation. Ask yourself, what's the underlying truth here? What am I missing? Am I holding on to any assumptions? Is my perception based in fear, or is it based in love?
And the key is to just observe what comes up without judgment.
Right. Exactly. Just notice what arises in your awareness. What new insights, what new perspectives might surface when you invite that truthful lens in. It's about creating that quiet space in your mind.
Yeah.
Where that, corrective power of truth can start to work.
Yeah.
Bringing clarity where there was confusion.
And maybe softening some of that emotional intensity you might be feeling.
Exactly.
And then connecting that with the second lesson about giving and receiving. How can we use that understanding in our everyday interactions? Especially when we're in conflict or we feel disconnected.
I think a powerful approach is to consciously shift your focus. In those moments where you're feeling separated or in conflict with someone, instead of focusing on what you feel you're lacking or how you've been wronged, ask yourself, what can I give in this situation?
So like in the middle of an argument, instead of trying to win or prove the other person wrong, you're saying we should think about what we can offer.
Exactly. Could you offer understanding even if you don't agree with them? Could you offer compassion for what they might be going through?
Yeah.
Could you offer forgiveness even if they haven't asked for it?
And the key here, based on lesson 108, is that this isn't just about being nice.
Right.
It's not just about them.
Exactly. By offering understanding, compassion, or forgiveness, you're benefiting yourself too. You're fostering connection. You're releasing resentment. You're moving away from that feeling of separation.
That's really powerful. So lesson 119 is like a reminder, isn't it? Bringing those two principles from the Course back into focus.
It is. It really highlights how powerful truth can be in reshaping our perceptions.
Yeah.
Dismantling those illusions that come from the ego,
Right.
which are often the root of our suffering.
And it shows us that interconnectedness of giving and receiving.
Yes.
And how that creates a more harmonious, fulfilling experience.
And like we were talking about before, these aren't just abstract ideas.
Right.
They have a real impact on our well-being.
Yeah.
The quality of our relationships and our ability to deal with challenges in a more peaceful way.
So by consciously using these principles, taking time for reflection and really trying to apply them, we can start to change how we see things and experience a more loving, connected, and peaceful reality.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into lesson 119. We really hope this exploration of truth and the unity of giving and receiving has given you some things to think about.
As you go about your day, consider this. If giving and receiving are truly one, what's one small act of giving you can do today?
Hmm.
A smile, a kind word, just listening to someone, knowing that by giving you're also enriching your own experience.
It's a beautiful thought. Thank you for joining us. Please like, share, and subscribe.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.